Hello, all you English 1102 friends, and welcome back for another session. This session is going to cover, this is from the Characters and Relationships module, and we're going to cover the story Jealous Husband Returns in Form of Parrot by Olen Butler, which is right here. It's a story from 1996. We are also going to cover the very short poem Divorce by Billy Collins. Like I said, these are both from the Characters and Relationships module. This is the story, this is the second story from the Characters and Relationships module. This is story is about 25 years old. Olen Butler is still alive. You see him right here. He is most famous even now for a book of his that's about 30 years old now called Good Scent from a Strange Mountain. He teaches at Florida State University now. You can see his list of books and short stories. He's got a book about how to write, the process of writing. Let's see if we can find anything else out that's important that I've forgotten about him. That may be it. Let's see if we can find out where he's originally from. Yeah, he's originally from Illinois, but he is taught mainly in Louisiana, and like I said, he teaches at Florida State in North Florida now. This is a story, it is worth talking about. The first thing that's worth mentioning about this story is this is a story we've already talked about anthropomorphism in class in relationship to a couple of other poems and stories. This is a poem that has some anthropomorphism. A human being dies, comes back as a parrot. In this story, you get this anthropomorphized story. That is also a good way to talk about the vocabulary word that is on the syllabus for today and that is connected to this and related to the final exam. It is flashback. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Not too much. A flashback is a concept, goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greek word for it, this goes all the way back to Aristotle, is analepsis. You can see it right here. An interjected scene that takes the narrative back in time from the current point in the story. It's really easy to think about. It's really easy to understand with this story because the past, the flashbacks, and the present are obviously so distinguished. All the flashbacks are when he is a human. The flashbacks in this story are when he is a human trying to catch his wife, whatever she's up to or not up to. You never really get confirmation in this story. The present time, one of the most important things to understanding flashback is flashbacks are often used to recount events that happen before the story's primary sequence of events to fill in crucial backstory. That primary sequence of events, it's easy to understand the primary sequence of events in this story because it begins with that primary sequence of events at the very beginning of the story. Because he has come back as a parrot, he's in the pet store, and then what happens in the primary sequence of events is the wife comes into the pet store, picks him out, takes him home, and he lives with her for a few days, sees that she has moved on, is seeing other people, they come and go in this house, and then at the end of the story, the end of that primary sequence of events, he tries to get out. He is out of the cage and tries to fly through the glass door. And then the flashback, the analepsis, the backstory is how he died trying to catch her cheating on him, climbing the tree, trying to look in the window, falling out of the tree, breaking his neck. That is all flashback and backstory. As they mentioned right here, flashing in the opposite direction of flash forward or what the ancient Greeks would have called prolepsis. The opposite of flashback is flash forward, where the story jumps off of its current timeline, the timeline that it covers, and jumps forward into some timeline that it's never going to get to in the primary sequence of events. If you have questions about flashback, get in touch with me. We can talk more. I can give you more examples. This story just gives you a really good example because of the way you know everything that's flashback is when he's still a human. So let's dive into the story a little bit. You can see the story starts with the husband as a parrot in a pet store, and what a big chunk of that first half of the story does is get him back home with his wife, but also give you that flashback to how he wound up this way. I can never quite say as much as I know. I can never quite say as much as I know. The end of the story circles back to this. This becomes important in the story. It's also important in the story just in the sense that you part of what is happening is he could never quite say as much as he knows or as much as he thought he knew when he was a human. So one of the problems that carries over here is that I can never quite say as much as I know. This story is also built on a lot of irony. The obvious irony is that when he comes back in a parrot, he has the ability, the thing that could have saved him from dying. He falls out of the tree, he can't fly, and he falls and breaks his neck. When he comes back, he can fly, but he can't do a simple thing like open the glass door, the back door, to get out and escape. So you have this irony of he gets what would have saved him, but he has lost the ability to do the simple things that could have let him escape as a bird, like open the back door, the glass door. I look at other parrots. I wonder if it's the same for them, if somebody is trapped in each of them, paying some kind of price for living their life in a certain way. That sense that he's paying his price as a parrot now for living his life the way he did. The other obvious irony of this is he died, and what he sort of seems obsessed with when he was a human being in all the flashbacks is all of this, seeing his wife with somebody else, catching his wife with somebody else. Well, now that he's a parrot, he gets all of that he could want. And in fact, the ending of the story is him finally getting enough of that and being like, I can't deal with this anymore. So he finally gets what he wants, and he discovers he doesn't really want it at all. He didn't really want to know. He didn't really want to see. You see that, for instance, hello, I say, and I'm sitting on a perch in a pet store in Houston. And what I'm really thinking is, holy shit, it's you. And what's happening is I'm looking at my wife. The wife comes into the pet store. They kind of find each other again. Hello, she says. She comes over to me. I can't believe how beautiful she is. Those great brown eyes, almost as dark as the center of mine. And her nose, I don't remember her for her nose, but its beauty is clear to me now. And you see this. For a moment, I think she knows it's me, but she doesn't, of course. But of course, she did that in my human life as well. It's all the same for her. Not that I was complaining at that moment. You see her find him in the pet store. And she is already with somebody else right here. There was this guy at my wife's shoulder, and all my feathers went slick, flat, like to make me small enough not to be seen, and I backed away. The pupils of my eyes pinned and dilated, and pinned again. He circled around her, a guy that looked like a meat packer, big in the chest and thick with hair. The kind of guy that I always sensed her eyes moving to when I was alive. Again, one of the things that hasn't changed is his sort of, to go back to the title, jealous husband. His jealousy is the same as a parrot, same as it was as a human being. And the wife, here you get, but she intervened. Those nut brown eyes were before me, and she said, I want him. And that's how I ended up in my own house once again. So he comes full circle, dies, comes back to his own house. She bought me a large black wrought iron cage, very large, convinced by some young guy who clerked in the bird department and who took her aside and made his voice go much too soft when he was doing the selling job. The meat packer didn't like it. I didn't either. More jealousy, one of the central ideas in this story. But he gets his cage. He gets home. I guess I'm happy enough about that. I can pace as much as I want. I can hang upside down. It's full of bird toys. That dangling thing over there with knots and strips of rawhide and a bell at the bottom needs a good thrashing. And a couple of times a day, I'm the bird to do it. So he's got his bird life and he's back home. And then you get the flashback. The last day I went out of this house as a man, I'd found the address of the new guy at my wife's office. He'd been there a month in the shipping department, and 3 times she'd mentioned him. She didn't even have to work with him, and 3 times I heard about him, just dropped into the conversation. His jealousy takes him over. This is his last day on earth, it turns out, because of his jealousy. I found out his name and his address, and it was one of her typical Saturday afternoons of vague shopping. So I went to his house in his car. It was just like the commercial was outside. He climbs the tree in the backyard. The crack in the shade was just out of view, and I crawled on along till there was no limb left, and I fell on my head. Thinking about that now, my wings flap, and I feel myself lift up. And it all seems so avoidable, though I know I'm different now. I'm a bird. Again, you get that irony of what the thing he has now is the thing that could have saved him from becoming what he is now. And here he is. My cage sits in the den. My pool table is gone. My cage is sitting. So a thing that he had is replaced by another thing, his cage. You see right there. She keeps the bedroom door open. I can see the space at the foot of the bed, but not the bed itself. That I can sense to the left, just out of sight. I watch the men go in. I hear the sounds, but I can't quite see, and they drive me crazy. Just like when he was a human being, his jealousy, the knowledge of what's going on, or even the suspicion of what's going on, drives him crazy. I flap my wings and I squawk and I fluff up and I slick down and I throw seed and I attack that dangly toy, but it does no good. It never did any good in the other life either. And so what you get in this story is this: some things have changed. He can fly now like he couldn't before, but some things are the same. The same jealousy, the same suspicion. Never did any good in the other life either. The thrashing around I did by myself. In that other life, I'd have given anything to be standing in this den with her doing this thing with some other guy just down the hall. All I had to do is walk down there and turn the corner, and she couldn't deny it anymore. But now all I can do is try to let it go. So the great irony is he has what he always wanted, the proof he always wanted. There's nothing he can do about it. All he can do is know. The one thing he couldn't have before is the one thing he has now. And then you get this introduction that forces the introduction of this scene right here that foreshadows the end of the story, where she forgets, leaves the door of his cage open. I climb beak and foot along the bars and curled. This is where she forgets, leaves the door of the cage open. He sees the outside through the big window door, the big glass door, and tries to fly, tries to escape, tries to get away from all this that he's trapped himself in. Unfortunately, a pain flared through my head and I fell straight down. The room whirled around, and the only good thing was she held me. She put her hands under my wings and lifted me and clutched me to her breast. I looked back to the wall of sky and trees. There was something invisible there. I remembered eventually about glass, and I knew I'd been lucky. I knew that for the little fragile bone skull I was doing all this thinking in, it meant death. That's important at the end of the story, where he decides if the door is there, he's just going to fly wide open into it and put himself out of this misery. And if it's open, he's going to escape this. But one of the central ideas of this story is the cage and being trapped. He got the knowledge that he finally wanted. He's got confirmation of all his suspicions, but he's trapped with that knowledge. He's trapped in the cage. He's trapped inside the glass door. He has what he always wanted, but it's a trap. And then, in fact, you get this guy who is the guy at the end of the story, this big guy, a guy with a thick Georgia truck stop accent and pale white skin and an Adam's apple big as my seed ball. This guy's been around for a few weeks. He makes a whooping sound on the hallway just out of my sight. At times like that, I want to fly again against the bars of the cage, but I don't. I have to remember how the world has changed. And the way the world has changed, she tells you. Her husband, the man that I was, is dead to her. She does not understand all that is behind my hello. And what happens as the story goes along, what would I say if I could? I was jealous in life. I admit it. We come around to the central idea that all this jealousy is a trap. He was trapped in it when he was alive. Now he is trapped in it in a different way as a bird. I admit it. I would admit it to her, but it was because of my connection to her. I would explain that. And you get this long description, long explanation of that. And then you get one of the funnier scenes in the story, which is the cracker scene. Half an hour ago, and this is where the story really shifts in, and you get to the last sort of section of the story. Let's see if we can find it. Half an hour ago, There's a moment that thrilled me. A word we all knew in the pet shop was just the right word after all. This guy with his cowboy belt buckle and rattlesnake boots and his pasty face, his twanging words of love trailed after my wife through the den past my cage, and I said cracker. He even flipped his head back a little at this in surprise, and he'd been called that before. To his face, I realized I said it again, cracker. But to him, I was a bird. He let it pass. But we're back to that idea that the real problem was that he and his wife couldn't communicate. He was struggling to communicate with her. This is one of the few times where one of the few words he can say is the right word. It fits. Cracker, I said, hello, cracker. That was even better. Again, he's only got a few words, but those words fit for this situation. It made me hopeful. I eased away from that end of the cage, moved toward the scene of peace beyond the far wall. So he's already thinking about escaping. And then you get what is really the beginning of the final scene. But then something new happened, something very difficult for me. She appeared in the den naked. I have not seen her naked since I fell from the tree and had no wings to fly. She always had a certain tidiness in things. She was naked in the bedroom, clothed in the den. But now she appears from the hallway, and I look at her. She's still slim. She's still beautiful, I think. At least I clearly remember that as her husband, I found her beautiful. Now, though, she seems too naked, plucked. I find that a sad thing. Again, you've got this. There are some little changes, some different changes in his bird mind, his bird existence. And then you get the story sort of hammers home the lack of communication. And since I've had success in the last few minutes with words, he's been able to successfully communicate really for the first time. When she comes back, I'm moved to speak. Hello, I say, meaning you are still connected to me. I still want only you. Hello, I say again, please listen to this tiny heart that beats fast at all times for you. She does indeed stop, and she comes to me and bends to me. Pretty bird, I say, and I'm saying you are beautiful, my wife, and your beauty cries out for protection. Pretty. I want to cover you with my own nakedness. And what you get is this long sort of stream of the things he says and the things he means and the things he wishes he could convey to her. And it's very clear this sort of play on the ways that people struggle to communicate with each other, in the ways that we say one thing and we really, there's more meaning behind it, and it's hard to communicate. And then the cracker comes around the corner and breaks up his attempts at communication. He wears only his rattlesnake boots. I take one look at his miserable, featherless body and shake my head. For a moment, I still think I've been eloquent. What I've said only needs repeating for it to have its transforming effect. He hopes he's gotten through to her. He hopes he's tried to communicate with her. He says every word he knows to her. Bad, open up, poor baby, bad bird. And I'm beginning to hear myself as I really sound to her. I can never say what is in my heart. Again, it's one of those important lines in this story where the story sort of hits you with the real meaning of the story or the real idea. I stand on my cage door now and my wings stir. I look at the corner to the hallway. Down at the end, the whooping has begun again. I can fly there and think of things to do about all this. But I do not. He has finally let go. He has finally learned to let go of his jealousy. He has finally given up on trying to act on it or doing anything about it. I turn instead, look at the trees moving just beyond the other end of the room. I look at the sky, the color of the brow of a blue front Amazon. A shadow of birds spanks across the lawn, and I spread my wings. I will fly now, even though I know there is something between me and that place where I can be free of all these feelings, free of all that jealousy, trapped by all that jealousy and emotion and obsession. I will fly. I will throw myself there again and again. Pretty bird, bad bird, good night. This sort of, even if it's a suicide mission, he knows he's got to let all this go, escape all of it, get past this sort of trap of his life. So that's the basic story. Again, it teaches you flashback. The flashback in here is him remembering his human life with her. The anthropomorphism, he has become anthropomorphized. He's a bird now with human thoughts and clearly his human memory of how things were. What have I missed here? Let me check my list and be sure. We've covered everything that I wanted to cover on this list. Let's see here. The reason we got flashback, we've got Robert Olen Butler. Here we go. The reason that I put Divorce, the Billy Collins poem, with this poem is it is also a poem about two people who could not communicate, who, as the title tells you, they're getting a divorce. Nobody's dying here yet. But the poem is devoted to this idea that things didn't work out, that the marriage was having problems, or, you know, if you're getting a divorce, the marriage is outright failed. You see Billy Collins here. He is generally considered, if not the United States' most famous poet right now, one of them. And it's been that way really for about 10 or 15 years now. He does sell out shows in New York and places like that. You see him in this picture here. Let's go back for just a second. He has been appointed as Poet Laureate of the United States, which is really the highest honor. You're basically the national poet. He was the Poet Laureate from 2001 to 2003. He teaches now. You see him. He lives and works now in upstate New York and teaches at the University of Stony Brook, Southampton. He is originally from New York City, so he's always been, he's back to where he's originally from in New York, though a little bit upstate. This is maybe his shortest poem. You can see right here, there's another picture of him. It's a poem called Divorce. You can see right here, it's only 4 lines long. You get 2 stanzas, 2 couplets. Each stanza is only 2 lines long. And there's really only one simple device here. This sort of metaphor where the flatware, the knife, the fork, and the spoon represent the forks and spoons represent the couple. The knives represent their lawyers that they've hired to get a divorce. Once, 2 spoons in bed. So they, one time they fit together, they're spooning in bed, fairly common expression. Once 2 spoons in bed, they fit together, is all smooth, they fit smoothly together. Now, tined forks. If you don't know what tine is, that's the sharp, pointy things. Some forks have 3 tines, some forks have 2 tines, some have 4 tines. The sharp, pointy parts of forks, now tined forks. So things aren't smooth anymore. They're sharp and pointy at each other. Their relationship has changed. Across a granite table and the knives that they have hired. And so you've got them, now they're 2 forks facing each other, stabbing each other, not fitting together smoothly anymore. And they have each hired knives to cut their marriage apart, to cut their relationship apart. So he's got a simple metaphor here. Knives, forks, and spoons. They used to be spoons, now they're forks. They don't fit together smoothly anymore, so they decided to hire the knives to cut their relationship apart. Super simple poem, but it gives you, just like Robert Olen Butler uses the idea of the parrot who is limited in what he can say, but he finally has gotten the one thing that he always wanted, the knowledge of what was going on. This poem uses this one simple image. Instead of a parrot, you get the silverware, the knives, forks, and spoons. And it's just a simple little image to show the way the marriage has gone from smooth to sharp and jagged and not working anymore. That's all for this section, this little video. This is, like I said, this belongs in the characters and relationships module. We will do one more chunk of stuff for this section that will include another Billy Collins poem, several poems together that we'll go through. But that also covers point of view and flashback on the reading and assignment schedule. That'll be useful come exam time, final exam time. If you have any questions, be in touch with me. and I will be happy to answer them either through Zoom or some feature like that, or just email me and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Otherwise, I will see y'all next time. Thank you for your time watching this.